So welcome to another episode of Drill Through the PS with myself, Arnold. Today we've got two special guests. We've got Aliyah, who has the Instagram tutoring by Aliyah, and we've got Ish, who runs the dental portal. And they're going to be giving their expert advice on personal statements. So I'm looking forward to hearing what gems they share with us. Remember, guys, we're not admissions tutors. We're just people that have been through the process. So take that into consideration as well. So thank you, Ish, and thank you, Aliyah, for being with us today.
Thank you for inviting us.
I will start the screen sharing and we'll get straight into it with a personal statement from somebody in college. How long did it take both of you to work on your personal statements?
I was really last minute.
You were last minute?
I was so last minute. I was working on my historical inquiry at the same time. I know they were hammering me to get down these plans and these drafts for that. So when it came to personal statement, mine literally transformed within 2 weeks. So I don't think I'm a very good example. But yeah.
I think I was a bit of I think I started in the summer, like this summer when we were meant to apply in September, October, but I was still umming and ahhing between dentistry and economics, so I had to write an economics personal statement at the same time.
Wow.
I applied to the 4 dental schools, and the 5th one, I did, like most people applied to like biomed or biology or something like that, but I applied to economics, and obviously you can't use a dentistry personal statement for economics. So you had to like privately write an economics one and send it like via email to the admissions tutor. Really dodgy way of doing it. It wasn't through UCAT at all. Yeah, so I had to like start a bit earlier.
Well, I'd love to read that sometime, the economics one. Let's see what you're putting in there. So we'll get straight into it. The way we do it is we read a paragraph or two, and we'll review what we think about the paragraph. So we'll get straight into it. So a person's smile is worth 100 words and is the first and most noticeable feature an onlooker will see. Due to my fascination in oral health and hygiene, I would like to make it my lifelong job to fix teeth, alleviate pain, and grant patients the smile they want, hence my desire to study dentistry. This desire is reflected in my past and current activities. So we'll start with Ish. What do you think about this as an intro? Because that's one of the hardest things that people struggle with, an intro. What do you think?
Yeah, exactly. As I've always thought with the intro to keep it quite short and like to the point. I think they've done that here, and also to put the personal side of a personal statement into it. With this one, I'm always not too keen on people being very cliche in personal statements and interviews. And I found with the first sentence, a personal smile is worth 100 words, and that's the most notable feature. It is quite cliche. It's taking up like 2 lines here, a fair few characters without really offering much. And then going into that, then I didn't like the due to my fascination in oral health and hygiene. I think they could have worded that a bit better in terms of, I don't think it'd be much of a fascination, more of like, I don't know, like due to my engagement in oral health. I think a fascination is just too broad. And then they've stuck with this cliche theme with lifelong job to fix teeth. So I think it just needs a bit of, instead of making it sound a bit like a story, make it sound a bit more of a personal statement.
Okay.
Just with them aspects of it at the start.
What would you score it?
I like the fact that it's quite to the point. It's explained why they want to do dentistry, because they've got this interest in oral health and hygiene, which is kind of what you want to put in your introduction. I'd give it a low 2 or a high 1.
All right. I think. And Aliyah?
I would say I definitely noticed that cliche first line. Not too keen on it, to be honest. The 100 words thing I'm just not too keen on that. Due to my fascination in oral health and hygiene, I want to know why you're fascinated. Where did that fascination stem from? Have you been reading articles, magazines? Did you spend a lot of time at a dentist as a kid? Did you have loads of teeth taken out? Tell me more about you. Everybody will say they're fascinated, but how can you prove that you're fascinated? So that was something. I would like to make it my lifelong job to fix teeth, alleviate pain, and grant patients a smile. Okay, that's great, but do you not think it's simplifying dentistry a little bit too much?
Yeah.
So that's great, but to be honest, this is a college personal statement, so I can't be too harsh. And then this desire is reflected in my past and current activities. Like I think that's a waste of characters. You don't need to tell me that. I will already know that if I continue reading on in your personal statement. And if I think I was an admissions tutor reading thousands and thousands of personal statements, am I engaged enough to keep reading on? I don't know, maybe so. I think it's an average personal statement introduction.
All right.
I'm pretty harsh though.
What would you give it out of 3?
A 1.
A 1. Okay. All right.
A 1.5. Let's bring it to a 1.5, but nothing more.
I think Aliyah made a good point here, where loads of admission tutors, whether we like it or not, they're human, and therefore they're going to have the human error of, come the 100th personal statement, the way they mark that will not be as well as they mark the first one. And that's just like, they won't intentionally do that, but that's just going to be a product of having to mark through so many. So if your introduction is really vague, wishy-washy, you're not really grabbing any attention here, you're just giving a cliche, this or that, the likelihood is they will continue to read the rest of the post statement, but they won't read it with the same fascination as they would have read it if the introduction was like, wow, this guy's going to stand out, this girl's going to stand out. But if they've read an introduction that's really boring, a bit like repetitive, then they're probably going to read the rest of the post statement with that attitude. And whether you like it or not, that's going to mark you down, because they're still human and they're going to have that human element of that human error of just really getting bored. And you can't blame them for that, because that's just the way the system works.
Okay,
it's
so
subconscious bias, definitely.
Okay, one tip each. What would you say is your top tip for someone approaching the intro? Do they do it first? Do they do it last? What should they focus on? What's one tip that you would just throw at somebody asking? So, Ish.
Yeah, so from my experience, my introduction was something I made perfect at the end, because your introduction is kind of your like prefix to everything that's going to go on below. And you kind of summarize everything a bit in your introduction, because the conclusion is a bit irrelevant in a personal statement. But the introduction kind of sums up everything. So once you've written out your whole personal statement, you've got everything, then you can go back to your introduction. You're like, how am I going to summarize all of this to make the reader then, because you can't include everything in the personal statement, but you have to give enough little bites of the carrot for them to keep reading the rest of it. So that's what I would do. I'd put down whatever you want for your introduction at the start, but I'd really focus on it towards the end and make it personal, because that's the most important thing with introduction. Really make it personal.
That's good. Aliyah?
Again, I would agree with Ish. I'd say definitely leave it till the end, because whether you like it or not, once a person reads the first few lines, they're going to already have an idea of the student, because they don't know you, they don't know what you're personally like. All they can see is some words on paper, and ultimately it depends how well you put across your ideas. So definitely leave the introduction until the end. I'd also say don't be fixated on, I need to create this absolutely amazing personal statement introduction that nobody's ever heard of. I need to have these reasons why I want to go into dentistry that's so different to everybody else, because that will not be the case. Me and my peers and everyone else in my year will all have similar reasons of why we want to go into dentistry. You've got that patient aspects, a real interest in science that's proven by things that you've done in your life leading up to that point. Like, your life can't be, oh, I've wanted to be a dentist since a child and therefore I've done this and this, but more like, throughout my life, I've explored careers in science by doing this activity and this STEM choice and that course. And from all of that, I've realized I'm really interested in dentistry as well as other stuff. And then I've kind of refined that desire, refined what I want to do into dentistry. There needs to be a pathway. It can't just be there to there.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Let's carry on. So, my love for science is reflected in my choice of A-levels. I have managed to acquire a deeper knowledge of scientific principles via my studies in chemistry and biology. The subjects have also enhanced my data analysis and numeracy skills. I also study business studies, which has given me ideas on how I could create job opportunities and build wealth from my future chosen career. For example, by buying my own NHS dental practice 2 years after my undergraduate. Furthermore, the skill of manual dexterity is an essential skill in dentistry because one will be working on a human body part where mistakes could result in harm or even death. By having achieved a grade 7 in GCSE textiles, I can evidence that I am careful with my hands because the subject involved attention to detail when designing and sewing garments. I also have my own braiding business in which I listen to my customers' requirements and use my fine motor skills and precision to deliver my customers' requirements to their satisfaction. All these skills are transferable to dental and medical practices. All right, so this time, Aliyah, we'll give you the go-ahead to go first. Yeah.
Okay. First, I don't know whether he or she has been advised by their college or by sixth form or school to have a paragraph where you talk about your A-level subjects, because personally, I feel that the second paragraph should definitely be work experience. So I think that's just a waste of characters. You've got a good 4 or 5 lines there that are just...
Why is work experience a good segue from the intro?
Because, like I said, it's a journey. In a way, it is a little bit like a chronological order, a story in terms of, okay, my motivation for dentistry was first like an idea, like something I was just interested in. Then I went on my work experience, and then I solidified what my expectation of dentistry was with a realization of, okay, what is the daily working life of a dentist like? What are the challenges? And also, okay, I know what a dentistry requires, but am I able to fill the shoes of a dentist? Because it's a very important job role, and not everyone can fill the shoes. And it's not me being mean or anything like that, but you need to be able to have a core skill set that has the potential to work on, basically. So I think
That's good.
It's really important. Like, work experience should be a second paragraph. If I was going to give anyone that tip, I know some people say that it doesn't have to be a set structure, but I would say definitely work experience, second paragraph. In terms of the line after that, I was like, no, please don't write this. Buying my own NHS practice 2 years after my undergraduate. What? That is so oversimplistic. You are not going to buy your NHS practice 2 years after. You're going to be, you've just done your DFT, then you're going to be, you're literally going to be finding your feet. So the fact that you put that in is such an oversimplification. And if I was an admissions tutor, I'd be like, no, why? But then,
do you think it would be alluding to the fact that this person might not actually have had much exposure talking to dentists? Because if they talk to dentists, what you're saying would have been brought up.
Yeah, definitely. Do you know what? I think like the reason I'm being so harsh is because I was able to I was lucky enough to have work experience and to speak with my dentist on work experience, who was really helpful and really significant. So maybe this person hasn't had that sort of work experience. Maybe their background in their college or school, they're not used to getting people into medicine or dentistry. So he or she has not had that support.
Yeah.
So I think that could be multiple reasons why you've got this sense of a very naive view on dentistry. But he or she does get a little better when they talk about manual dexterity. So that's great. Okay, they understand that manual dexterity is involved. I don't need to know what grade you got in GCSE textiles, to be honest. But then you spend too long talking about the same thing. You could tell me that you're good with your hands and in 2 lines. And then if you're going to bring in your braiding business, then do it as such that you're trying to prove that you've got time management skills, and you're trying to prove that you're an all-rounded individual. So you could say that, I turned my hobby of textiles and braiding and all of this, and first you sent it to your friends, they really liked it, they were like, why don't you make a business of it? And then you could talk about it as, my customers were so happy with what I produced that it just motivated me further and further. And that's one of the reasons why I want to do dentistry, because I envision that my work on my patients will be the same, that they'll really like my work, and so therefore it will motivate me to keep going.
Yeah.
I think there's just a way to talk about things that you show off, but in a very subtle way.
Yeah. Then that's good. Score?
1.5 because of the manual dexterity.
Okay. Okay, 1.5. What I'm seeing is, from what you're saying as well, is the ingredients are there, but the way they've been cooked together just isn't working.
Yeah.
You know, because you can see that this person is thinking about their business studies, you know, being a practice owner in the future, their braiding business, but the way they just put it together isn't working for the person that's going to end up reading it.
Yeah,
Ish.
definitely.
Yeah, so I'd echo what Aliyah said in terms of work experience should always be the second paragraph. It's just how it works. It is, whether you like it or not, your personal statement is a chronological order, because you want them to get to the conclusion and then like, yep, this person's the whole package, not be like, the second paragraph shouldn't be something you've done recently and then you go back 10 years and get to something else. I think there is a time and space for talking about your A-levels, and for those doing graduate, which we'll go into later, there's a time and space for talking about what your past degree was. But you would condense this and just simplify, like, why chemistry, biology, why they're specific for you going into dentistry, not just what you've gained from the subject, but why everything you mentioned in your whole personal statement has to relate back to dentistry, and then has to be followed up by an example. Going on to the building wealth thing, I think there's three main things that you should avoid talking about in a personal statement or an interview, and that's money, religion, and politics. As long as you stay clear of them three things.
Why am I staying clear of that?
Because, so the way it worked, well, I think religion and politics are quite self-explanatory in terms of there's little relevance to them in terms of your dentistry application. You might talk about politics a bit if you go into Brexit at an interview, but that's dictated by admission tutor, not by you. Money is really important because whether we like it or not, there is this stigma when it comes to money and business in dentistry, and especially in dental school. It's not even mentioned in dental school, but it's talked about after you graduate, and it's something you just taught to learn after you graduate. And that's because all the admissions tutors and the professors and lecturers at university have gone down their traditional academic route, where they've all gone into further study, specializing, etc., etc., etc. So if you're then talking about owning a practice, going into cosmetic dentistry, doing facial aesthetics when you graduate, that's not going to sit well with someone who's gone down, and 3 or 4 people who've gone down the very traditional academic route. And ultimately, you're tailoring your personal statement to the people who are going to read it. And they are the people who are going to read it. The person who reads your personal statement isn't going to be somebody who opened a practice 3 years later and is now retired at 35. It's not that person. It's going to be someone older who's gone through a very traditional academic route. And therefore, you just avoid it, especially if you're going to talk about it in a way where it's just not true. Like, no, you're not going to open up NHS practice 2 years after graduating. And there's some contradiction later on in the personal statement which negates that point. I think with manual dexterity is really important. So manual dexterity is something that dental schools don't expect you to be amazing at when you start, because it's something that's developed. It's a developed skill. You don't have to have played grade 8 piano to be a dentist. You learn how to be a dentist over the 5 years. But this person here has got 2 really good examples, but you only really need to give the best one here. You don't need to talk about manual dexterity for a whole paragraph. If I was them, I would specify the braiding business or the sewing garments. I would completely get rid of the GCSE textiles. This isn't the UCAS application here. You don't need to put your grades down. I would just focus on sewing garments because then you go into you can time manage. You've got manual dexterity. You can do lead. You've got this commercial side of you. You've got all of these extra skills that you've got just by that braiding business, and that's a really unique thing that they have here, because not many people have interests like this where they've been commercialized and made it into a business. So there's a really good point here, but I think they just need to sit down, think about that point a bit more, think about the skills they've developed by that, and really just renegotiate how they're going to write about it. The last sentence is just it's a waste of space, really. The person who's reading it isn't taking anything away from it. Why include medical practices? I don't know. It's a dentistry personal statement. Every single line, the personal statement is so precious because you're really constrained with characters and lines. So the way you should look at it, if this sentence isn't improving my application, get rid. And that's really the cutthroat way of looking at a personal statement. And that sentence, especially at the end, that's not adding any value to the personal statement, so just get rid of it. I would give it a low one, I think.
Low one, okay.
It's got potential, I think, but like you mentioned before, I think they've got some of the right ideas, and this probably is like a first draft, and you probably get through a lot of drafts, and obviously the finished article will be a lot better. It's just honing in on some of the good ideas, I think.
All right, let's continue. We've still got quite a bit to get through. In 2018, I had a 1-week work experience placement in a pharmacy setting. I worked alongside qualified pharmacists and students, helping to pack patients' medications in blister packs, organizing medication into shelves, and sorting prescriptions. I learned how to discard medication safely, how to maintain patient confidentiality, and the causes of side effects in certain medications. However, after reflecting on this enriching experience, I knew that I wanted to have a job which enables me to physically operate on the human body rather than working behind the counter as a pharmacist. Other early experiences in my life also gave me skills transferable to the dental and medical practice. So let's start off with Ish with this one.
Yeah, so they've gone into work experience now, which is good. The issue is there's zero dentistry work experience in this paragraph, which is fine because I feel like with COVID, people are going to have struggling to get work experience, but I think that's where you have to be proactive. You don't want your only reference to work experience in your personal statement to be something non-dentistry, because this is ultimately a dentistry personal statement. Look at online courses. Sheffield do the Discover Dentistry course. There's loads of these courses that you can name drop instead of just focusing solely on the pharmacy one. But say they have that. I think for this student, I would talk about the pharmacy because it is something they've done, but simply just talk about it. Don't go into full detail about it because they've wasted a lot of space here just talking about something that they're not keen on. And they completely contradict themselves right at the end of the paragraph because they basically say, I've talked about this experience, this amazing experience I've just done, and right at the end, by the way, I don't like it because this, and that's it. So why talk about it for 5 lines if right at the end you just be like, by the way, it wasn't for me. I think it's a good opportunity here for them to show with the work experience, the most important thing, anyone can do work experience, anyone can watch a dentist do a filling, but it's what you've gained from that, and that's what's going to differentiate you from another applicant. Every single applicant applying for dentistry will have very, very similar work experience. There's only so much you can really do, but it's what you've taken away from that which will make your personal statement more personal. So for the pharmacy stuff, they can see, like, I watched teamwork, I watched communication skills being expertly done, blah, blah, blah. And that's what's showing that you've taken something away from it. I could get my mum to sit in a dental practice and watch someone do a filling. She won't know any different. But it's the fact that if I sat and watched the filling, I'd take something away from it, whereas she probably wouldn't. And that's what you want to, that's the difference you really want to show when you're talking about work experience. I just think there's a lot of, I'd say from the first part, I think in 2018 as well, that just shows it's 2020 now that you're applying. In them 2 years, have you not really done anything else? You look what's happened in them 2 years. Just look at our lives and how they've changed, and like how coronavirus, etc., has all just impacted us. What have you done to like stand out in them 2 years? Like I can't write a personal statement and be like 5 years ago I did this, and that's the only thing I've got to show in the past 5 years. I think that's the first red flag that would be raised if I was reading that. I was like, what have they actually, it's 2020 now. They're going to be doing their interviews in 2021. That's 3 years later. What have they done in them 3 years apart from shadow a pharmacist who they don't like? You know, you have to, it's like being chronological, like we said, there has to be some sort of relevance to your time period.
It's good. It's good. And rating, what score?
I'm trying not to be too mean here, but I feel like you'd rather, it's better off to be honest than not. I'll probably give it another 1.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Aliyah?
I think Ish pretty much summed up everything. I'm going to go backwards now. So other early experiences in my life also gave me skills transferable to the dental and medical practice. I don't know where you've learned this technique of when you make a line, repeat it, and it's going to have this effect. Maybe that's something you learned in GCSE English,
but you're writing a personal statement and each word should be so valuable. That's not giving me anything. And as I said, everyone can talk. You need to show me that what you've learned, not just, okay, I've learned these transferable skills, and you keep repeating that. So at the end of every paragraph, that's 5 lines. And I don't know how many characters that is, but you just do not have the space for that. So yes, okay. And then it's a bit weird that I'm working backwards, but this is just the way I'm reading it up. I think, so I knew that I wanted to have a job which enables me to physically operate in a human body rather than working behind the counter as a pharmacist. Okay, physically operate on a human body. So do you want to be a surgeon? Why have you not gone into medicine? That doesn't tell me dentistry. That just tells me something in healthcare that's a bit more proactive. In that sense, also, I think there's a negative tone to working behind the counter as a pharmacist. So it's really important that when you're writing something, and what admissions tutors do not want to see is you're putting down any other profession. Pharmacists are absolutely great. If we didn't have pharmacists, people like dentists wouldn't be able to do their job, or doctors, or the whole healthcare system would collapse. So the fact that you're, just by writing working behind the counter as a pharmacist, it's just dropping that negative tone in. And it's only something very subtle, but I think admissions tutors, after so many years, they will realize that there's a negativity in that. And in your personal statement, you need to be positive about every experience. So you should have written something more along the lines of, I was so grateful that I was able to land an opportunity to work in a pharmacy, that it's a blessing. It's something that not everyone can do, and you should be lucky that you've even got this experience. So yeah, and then in terms of, if this was a pharmacy personal statement, I'd be like, okay, that's fine. They've talked about what they've done, but organizing prescriptions, medication, sorting through shelves, this could have been an application for Asda, if that makes sense. Like, I don't need you to tell me what you did. I need you to tell me what you learned from it. And also, since you haven't done any dentistry work experience, what have you realized are the similarities between dentistry and pharmacy? What have you learned are the differences? And then tell me, therefore, that's why you believe that pharmacy was a closed door, and then you went to and explored other options in healthcare, for example, medicine, or for example, dentistry. Like I say again, it has to be a chronological order. You need to go through a door, realize it's not the right door, close it, go through another door. You can't just be like, have this set idea in your head that I just want to do dentistry, because it's not true. Like, you can't just have a set idea. You need to go into everything with an open mind. But yes, I think in terms of patient confidentiality, that's good, but you could have spoken about it in another way. Like, you could have really shown off about patient confidentiality, saying that maybe talking about what, like, patient autonomy maybe. You can talk about how important that is in dentistry. Maybe you could link it to social media. So during this time, I've been quite active in social media. I see all of these dentists, and something that's really key that I've seen is the presence of dentists and other healthcare professionals on social media, and then bringing that patient confidentiality aspect. The fact that it's so important that not just in your practice that you maintain patient confidentiality, but also outside of the practice. Like, you're not just a dentist 9 to 5, but even outside of hours, if that makes sense. Yes, I think I've practically covered everything. Again, in 2018, I don't need to know a 1 week work experience. You could have done 1 day and you could have learned so much more than somebody who spent 3 weeks or 1 week in a work experience placement. So yeah, in terms of dentistry personal statement, if I had just read that paragraph, I could have sworn that you were going into pharmacy, since you spent 5-6 lines talking about pharmacy and a couple of words. I don't even think, have they mentioned dentistry in this whole paragraph? Let me have a look.
No, they haven't.
No, not even one word. Oh, dental. Wow. Okay, so two, three words before the end of your paragraph, you said dentistry once. So yeah, without going off too much on a tangent, I think if this was for a pharmacy personal statement, I would have been a lot more positive about it. But since it is a dentistry personal statement, I'd have to give it a 1 as well.
Okay.
I think there's some consistency here between the second and third paragraph ending on dental and medical practices. So I'm not too sure I think they're trying to. It's almost as if they're applying for a whole holistic healthcare degree rather than dentistry. I think they wanna do everything, but not quite something.
Could it be that they've applied not for all four dentistry? Maybe they've applied for maybe a dentistry, a medicine, a pharmacy, and like maybe they're using one personal statement for everything. Not a good idea. I wouldn't recommend that, but it just makes you think.
And okay, so you're both giving that part a 1.
Yeah, with what Aliyah said, with the giving the timing, the duration of your work experience. The only time where you should say, I did a 2-week work experience placement, etc., is if the specific dental school you're applying to asks for minimum 2 weeks, because there have been so many students in the past who have applied to dental schools who have required 2 weeks work experience, and some of the people I study with now as well, but they've only in their personal statement wrote 1 week, and straight away that application gets rejected because you failed to hit that minimum criteria of 2 weeks. So that's the only time when you should really, it's worth putting it in. But if you're talking about pharmacy, it's obviously not worth it at all.
I think Manchester is the one that needs the 2 weeks. Yeah. And they don't use personal statement, they use their own form. And I remember literally having to slot in my exact dates to prove that I'd done the 2 weeks. So yeah, definitely.
All right. So Manchester, they actually asked you to fill in a sheet.
So Manchester don't use the personal statement. They have their own application form. And it's got, basically, it takes out the waffle of a personal statement and just gets down to the core. And I think it might be a lot easier for them to read and get through. So they ask you where you completed your work experience and the dates of your work experience. I know they say on their website that you need to have 2 weeks. So therefore, something I always tell my students is that no matter where you're applying, always aim, this year excluding, always aim to get 2 weeks of work experience. So no, you're not ruling any dental school out, if that makes sense, and you're fitting all the requirements.
Very good to know. I was voted by my peers to be head of year 12, and during my time as head of year, I was at the forefront of organizing sixth form events, such as the Christmas party. I embodied the voice of my peers, working to achieve the best of their interests, and this role requires great confidence. Although this role meant I had to come out of my shell, it brought me a sense of self-actualization and that I am capable of leading a group of individuals. I have been an altar server at my local church for many years, which requires working as a team with fellow servers. In addition, I have volunteered in aiding year 7 pupils who needed help with reading to enhance their literacy skills. This role required building a relationship with a younger student by gaining their trust and offering them the most comfortable support. I enjoyed this because I felt like I was being of help to someone who needed it most. Furthermore, in November 2019, I attended a chemistry lecture at the University of Birmingham, led by Sir Martin Polyakov, CBE FRENG FRS, where my eyes were open to the many opportunities available after my undergraduate. Specialization is something I definitely would like to do after my undergraduate, whether it is in orthodontics, pediatrics, or oral maxillofacial. Studying dentistry may be a challenge, but I believe my tenacious nature will allow me to overcome any obstacles that come my way in the same way I have tackled the challenges I have encountered in my life so far. Aliyah.
I like this paragraph in the sense that you're showing me that dentistry and academics is not your whole life. You like doing other things. You like extracurriculars and getting involved with your school and your local church. That's great. In terms of, I think they've spoken about their experiences, but then not linked it back to dentistry, which I think is fundamental. So you've spent about 2-3 lines right at the beginning. So you've given me a bit of reflection. So although this role meant I had to come out my shell, it's brought me a sense of self-actualization, that I'm capable of leading a group of individuals. Okay, that's fair enough. But now tell me, how can you link that back to dentistry? So this will be vital as a dentist, since majority of the time I will be working with my dental nurse and I will be responsible for leading the patient care. So link it back to dentistry. I've been at my altar serve. Yeah, okay. Then you talk about like this kind of, you talk about your soft skills, for example, your mentoring. and then offering them support. That's really great, because something that I remember about my work experience, and I actually spoke about it, was there was an emergency patient that came in one day, and he needed an emergency extraction. He vomited in the surgery. So before the dentist could even do anything like manual and use his expertise, what he had to do was calm down the patient, give him a tissue, give him some water, make him feel at ease. And that's so important, because there is this stigma around dentistry that it's so scary and there's some great pain involved. So the fact that you've spoken about like gaining their trust and making them comfortable, that's really good, because at least I know what you're trying to say, but you need to make it more clear, in the sense that I'm aware of this, and therefore because I have these skills, I believe I have the potential to build those same relationships and rapport with my patients as well. All you need to do is just link it back to dentistry. Last 2 lines about the chemistry lecture, just a bit vague, to be honest. If you spoke to me about a topic in chemistry that links to dentistry, for example, like materials that they use in fillings, and linked to dentistry somehow, then it would be relevant and then I would be interested. But other than that, and even name calling Sir Martin, there's just no need for that, because not everyone have the same opportunities as you.
Yeah.
So yes, I'll leave it at there. And then last paragraph, would you like me to go on to that, or?
Yes.
Okay, so last paragraph for specialization, again, it's like they're opening the NHS practice after 2 years. So everybody knows specialization is something that many people go into, but I don't think that you should go into dentistry knowing that, okay, I definitely want to specialize, or that, like the fact that you've name called orthodontics, pediatrics, oral and maxillofacial. What about endodontics? There's so many other things. So if you're going to list them, I would rather not, because you should list more, if that makes sense. Studying dentistry may be a challenge, but I believe my tenacious nature will enable me to overcome any obstacles that come my way. Okay, that's an okay end. I wouldn't criticize that too much. All I would say is, remember, it is a story, so link it back to your first paragraph, something that you've mentioned there. I can't remember at the top of my head what they mentioned in their first paragraph, but I know what I did was I linked it back to the first paragraph. Okay, so due to my fascination in oral health and hygiene, something like that, or you want to make it your lifelong job, bring that back and make it a story, make it a circle. And I think that's a way to prove to your admissions tutor that, you know what, you're a very logical, you're very rational, you're a very thoughtful person, and that is what you need to survive a career in dentistry, in my opinion. I think that's it.
The final part, what would you give it? The final 2 paragraphs?
Final 2 paragraphs, just under a 2. Just under a 2, not linked. So maybe 1.5 because of the linking. That's really important. So you've spoken about the right stuff.
All right, Ish.
Yeah, so I think the paragraph which starts, I was voted by my peers, is probably the best paragraph they've got in their personal statement. But the key thing is when you go into, especially when you go into, well, throughout the personal statement, but particularly in your extracurricular paragraph, is to give your point, to give the relevance to dentistry, and then to give your example, and make that consistent, like make that religious. You have to deal with everything you talk about related to dentistry, and if you've got a personal example, put that in as well, and just put every single point you have, put that. Or else you're just giving a point. Anyone can list, I did X, Y, Z, but if you've not shown that you've taken anything away from it, or you've not proven that you've done it, then there's no point. It adds 0 value. Yeah. The first thing that crossed my mind when I read the head of year 12 bit, that's a really good position to be in, and that's quite a unique thing that will differentiate their personal statement from others. But then they finish the sentence with, I organise events such as the Christmas party, which makes it seem a bit like comical. Like, is that all you did as a head of year 12? There's definitely, I don't doubt that there's a lot more they'll have done as a head of year 12 than organise a Christmas party. And it's probably things that they don't even realise that admission tutors are looking for. Like head of year 12, that means you'll have developed your communication skills, your leadership skills, your teamwork, just to name a few things. And this is what admissions tutors look for. They don't care if you've organised a Christmas party, the end of year ball. It's the skills that you needed in order to organise that Christmas party and organise the end of year ball that are more important, rather than the thing himself. So it's a good start. It's a really unique position they've got there. They just need to figure out, what have I learned from this position and how can I incorporate this? Which they go on to a bit later on. They go on to say that I've embodied my voice. blah, blah, blah. But it is ultimately just cut the waffle. Every sentence you write has to add some value to your personal statement. If it's not adding value, or if you're even doubting whether it adds value, that probably means it's not adding any value. So get rid of it. You just have to be cutthroat. I like the part that they've served as an altar at the local church. It shows some voluntary work. It shows like doing something for your community. But then talk about that's done some voluntary work. Talk about the community aspect of it, because they've not really gone into it. All they've done is state what they've done without giving what they've learned from it and how it relates to dentistry. And that's consistent throughout this paragraph. And then towards the end, I didn't really like the furthermore in November 2009 bit. So the chemistry lecture, from what I've read here, is just a chemistry lecture, so no relevance to dentistry. They've gained nothing from it apart from the fact that it was a chemistry lecture. Very vague at the end. It opened many opportunities. It showed me many opportunities available. How does a chemistry lecture at the University of Birmingham show many opportunities available after my undergraduate in dentistry? If this was a chemistry personal statement, then maybe it shows some. But if there's no correlation. If they said I attended a dentistry lecture, then maybe you can at least make that link. Yeah. But because there's no obvious link here, they have to create the link themselves and show to the admissions tutor. By name dropping here and then giving the CB everything else, number one thing that everyone stresses out with a personal statement is keeping count with the characters. If you're going to waste 10 characters giving all the MBE, BDS, MBBS, whatever you want, then it's just a waste of space. I would get rid of the whole name dropping thing, because that's something you can elaborate if picked up on at interview, and you can talk about more freely there. But the personal statement is really, you just have to be to the point with everything. Going on to the conclusion, I've always advised to make the conclusion as simple as possible, no more than a sentence, if maybe maximum 2 sentences. And that's because you'll have said everything you want to say throughout the whole personal statement anyway. You're not adding any real value in the conclusion. And if you find that you're adding value in the conclusion, that means you've missed value out elsewhere in the personal statement. It's like reading a book. Once you get to the conclusion, you know everything that's in the book. The conclusion just finishes it off for you. It's your completion, isn't it? If you read a conclusion and you're like, oh my God, I've learned so many new things in the conclusion, that means whoever's written the book has missed out everything in the main body. And it's the same with the personal statement. So really simplify it. There's the contradiction that I mentioned earlier, ortho, peds, max facts, but then saying you want to open up a practice, like how many things do you really want to do? I think this is consistent, because the same way they've tried to be holistic with all their healthcare professionals, they're trying to now like be a jack of all trades and do all the different specialities. Really, all you have to do in something like that would be like specialization is something that I'd want to consider, blah, blah, blah. Dentistry plays host to a great number of specialities, and the end of that. That's it. There's no need to have a 3-sentence or 4-line conclusion, because you're just adding zero value. I've read that conclusion. I don't know if you guys are the same, but I've read that and I've not learned anything new about the applicant. I've not taken anything away about the applicant. I'm reading that. Even if that conclusion wasn't there, I'd have made my mind up about the applicant before it anyway. So yeah, just cut the BS basically.
What would you score it?
I think the paragraph above the conclusion, the extracurricular paragraph, I think it's got some really good points. They just need to know what they're writing. So I'd be nice and give them like a low 2. Okay. The conclusion, I just think this comes with refining your personal statement. Once they go into their 3rd, 4th, and 5th draft, they realize they need more characters above, and they'll get rid of a lot of that conclusion. Yeah. A conclusion is probably a 1, but I think that's just something. Come your last draft of your personal statement, your conclusion will look very different to that. And if it doesn't look very different to that, then you've gone somewhere wrong in the main body.
All right. So before you both give us your overall score, or whether you would let this person into dental school or not, I'll just summarize some of the things that have been pointed out. So the fact that at the start, you're talking about your fascination to oral health and hygiene, but you're not really specifying what personal experiences you've had. You're talking about owning a dental practice after 2 years, but at the same time, you're talking about specializing after the undergraduate. How realistic is all of this? Have you had a really good understanding of, dentistry and the career path? And just being intentional about each sentence. What is the reader going to gain from each thing that you're saying, and how does it relate to dentistry in particular? Guys, we could continue going, on and on. Aliyah and Ish do this for a lot of students, so you can message them directly. If you want to know more about what they've been talking about, message them directly. I'll put their links in the description. But can you just tell us whether you would let this person into dental school just based on the personal statement? We'll start with Aliyah.
I think in terms of like grades, everyone will have the minimum at least. So, and in terms of UCAT, you'll already have had that cutoff and got rid of anyone below that cutoff. So in terms of personal statement, it's really, do I give this person an interview or not? So based on this, I don't think there's sufficient evidence of that they're a candidate any worthier than any other candidate to deserve a place for an interview. So I think just based on this, unfortunately, I wouldn't give him an interview.
Okay. Ish?
Exactly the same. Yeah, I wouldn't give the candidate an interview, but I will give them the benefit of the doubt that this is probably their first draft, and very few people will be given an interview based on their first draft. It's what they look like after their 10th draft that really matters. So to give them the benefit of doubt with that, their personal statement that they submit in October will be a lot better than that. But on this current personal statement, then they won't. But a few people will get in on their first draft personal statement.
Yeah. No, thank you for that, guys. And guys, make sure to check out the next video where we look at a different type of personal statement, where it's by a student who's finishing an undergrad degree before applying for dentistry. So thank you guys for being on this video today.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you so much.